Good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie Mack. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the communications director for the Frontline, and welcome to the Frontline 40 announcement panel. I'm so excited to be with you all this evening. I am a light skinned Black woman. I have short, curly blonde hair. I have on pink glasses, a pink dress, and I'm wearing white earbuds. Tonight, we are so blessed to be joined by four folks that are recipients of the Frontline 40 Award. And if you don't know, the Frontline is a joint project of the Working Families Party, the Movement for Black Lives Electoral Justice Project, United We Dream, and the Rising Majority. We came together in 2020 to harness the power of the uprisings around the country for racial justice for our election cycle. Since then, we have been working around the clock for care and relief for our communities and bringing political education to the masses. And the Frontline 40 was born out of a desire to highlight those incredible organizers, activists, and journalists, doctors, all sorts of folks that are on the front lines of the amazing work that happens around the country. So often we found that those with the highest profiles are not those in the trenches doing the hard work. And so this was an opportunity for the Frontline to highlight folks that we know have been doing deep, connective work in community with folks and to give us the opportunity to celebrate them. And I'm so excited to welcome on stage today. We have Omisade Burney-Scott, Nayyirah Shariff, Jaelynn Scott, and Sarah L. Webb. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to see you all and to be here together and to have a conversation. Before we get into the discussion, though, let's make sure everyone knows who you each are and do some self-introductions. So, Omi, I'll throw it to you first. Let the folks know who you are.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. My name is Omisade Burney-Scott. My pronouns are she and her. I am joining this conversation today from the occupied land of the Occaneechi-Sapona Nation, also known as Durham, North Carolina. I am a creative and a social justice advocate, and I'm the creator and founder of the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause, which is a public media platform focused on normalizing menopause and aging for Black women, women identified, and gender expansive people. I'm a medium brown skin, 50 plus woman with naturally gray hair. I'm wearing green horn-rimmed glasses, red lipstick, Black earrings with really pretty snakes on them, a Black t-shirt, and white earbuds.
Thanks so much, Omi. Let's throw it over to Nayyirah.
Peace. I'm Nayyirah Shariff. I hail y'all from Flint, Michigan, or the occupied lands and the Anishinaabe people. I'm the director of Flint Rising, and I want to thank Frontline for put me on y'all list. I am a light-skinned Black person. I don't think I told y'all my pronouns there, they and them. I didn't put that on there. But I am a light-skinned Black person, which y'all can't really see it, but waist length, brown hair. And I am wearing a Black t-shirt with green and yellow writing that says I am Black History, and with a yellow border. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nayyirah. Welcome. Next up, we're going to throw it over to Dr. Webb. Sarah.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Webb, the founder of Colorism Healing. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a dark-skinned Black woman. I'm currently wearing double strand twists, yellow earrings in an inverted triangle shape, and a gray t-shirt with gold letters that list popular street names in Harlem. And again, I founded Colorism Healing back in 2013 to raise awareness about this issue as a global phenomenon and to promote healing and foster change.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And last but for sure not least, my good friend Jaelynn Scott, the Reverend Jaelynn Scott. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you. I'm Jaelynn Scott, she, her pronouns, executive director, Lavender Rights Project, also organizer of the Washington Black Trans Task Force. I am currently on occupied Steilacoom lands, actually on the border of Steilacoom and Coast Salish, and what is now called Tacoma, Washington. by settlers and folks like me. And I am medium skin, Black woman, Black trans woman with currently I have short brown hair on today, but that might change tomorrow. And long red cloth hoop earrings and a black dress tank top. It's good to be with you.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for those wonderful introductions. So I want to open up with kind of how the concept of the Frontline 40 came to be in the first place. It was a conversation internally. And for those who don't know, the Frontline is run by 4 amazing Black women. So shout out to them, our campaign director, Tiffany Flowers, our social media manager, Ceci Sparrow, and our administrator, Naima Davis. And so we have been talking amongst ourselves about what we referred to as the celebrity-fication of organizing in the world, and what that has done and not done for the work that we have seen bubbling up around the country and moving forward. And also how it has pushed frontline organizers to feel as if they have to become a brand. So I wanted to start off the conversation right there, which is, what are your thoughts about this phenomenon in general, and how is it affecting the work that you're trying to do and the work that you're seeing happen? Jaelynn, can we throw it to you first and just get your initial thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking from one particular lens with Black trans women and Black trans femmes, and it's sort of on this backdrop of visibility that it seems really important for us, and that I think in the last, I would say summer of 2020, maybe a couple of years before that, more and more visibility for Black trans women and femmes have been happening. Some of that stuff is in regards to, actors and media, but there have been people like Ashley Marie Preston, Angelica Ross, Elle Hearns, and others who have gotten a significant amount of celebrification, not for acting, but for their organizing work. It seems really important, I think, for me as a Black trans femme. I am 45 now, but I can imagine even at 20, if I had seen that was a possibility to stand in my truth, to be recognized in my truth, and be an authority sort of on liberation of Black trans women and Black trans femmes. And so in that regard, like that, I'm totally for, and it's been so important. But there's sort of this, that's against the backdrop of the bigger they come, the harder they fall, right? And so, and putting folks on pedestals and us moving away from sort of savior activisms of the 60s and of my parents' movement. But still that visibility, I'm like, can we just give Black trans folks they moment, let them be the saviors, let them be the celebrities, and let's all protect them too at the same time.
I love that spirit of both and, right? I started that by saying, it's like, it's doing things and it's also not doing things. Sarah, let's go over to you. What are your thoughts around this, the celebrity-fication of organizing?
Yeah, so I think kind of to Jaelynn's point as well, I think all activists, all organizers throughout history have been a brand. And I think what we're seeing now, though, compared to in the past, where the brand was a direct result of the work. And now it's like people are starting with the marketing, and they're starting with the image and the sort of promotional aspects before the work has actually been done. And so I think that's the shift that I've seen or observed, is that people go into it to become celebrity activists versus doing the work and letting your profile rise as a result of the value in the work and the transformation that you persist and persevere to create. But I also think that it's a tool, right? Like social media, press in general is a tool in the right hands with the right intentions that can be very effective and that can be very powerful in terms of increasing visibility. And I know in my work, because I'm trying to reach as many people as possible, I think there's something to be said about, understanding how to make a TikTok video go viral. I haven't done that yet, but I can see how it would be helpful in terms of making sure that the message reaches people. But I also feel like on the other side of the coin is that it promotes a sort of shallow understanding of some of the issues. It promotes sort of a surface level where people are more concerned with the image of so-called wokeness than they are about the actual deep transformational change that can happen.
You said a whole word there. And since you mentioned TikTok, I'm going to throw it to Omi next, who you should all definitely follow on TikTok. I want to mention that for sure.
That's funny that you said that because I just got on TikTok. So
I love your TikToks. They're so beautiful. I always find them so centering. So yeah, Omi, what are your thoughts on this concept of? I know you have a lot, so I want to make sure you get in here too.
yeah, no, I have a lot of thoughts, and everything that's been said, I really resonate with. I was thinking back to when I first started doing movement work back in like 1995. And we used to do a lot of political education around understanding kind of the cult of personality, right? So the cult of personality of MLK or Frederick Douglass or Ida B. Wells or Malcolm X or Assata Shakur, right? It's like, what does that cult of personality do? What did it do for the movement? What did it do for people who are on the vanguard of the movement? How did it deify people, also demonize people? How did it dehumanize some of these folk, right? And so I'm always thinking about, well, who's the driver of the narrative? And I think it's a very powerful thing to see in this next iteration of movement work. And also, I think there's something that Sarah said around this proclamation that people are doing. It's like, I am an activist, I am a healer, I am a spiritualist, I am whatever. Like, you get to do that. But I also think we also have lineage. And I'm always very, very keen on lineage. So when I talk to people about my identity as an advocate, I talk about my lineage. When I talk about my identity as a spiritual person and practicing African traditional religion, I talk about my lineage. And so when I see people spontaneously proclaim themselves, in particular on social media, it gives me pause. And I'm very curious around the heightened visibility and what it offers, and also what it also kind of like disrupts or kind of distorts. Like there's a distortion in the visual of what we see. And that's why I think, Leslie, I try really hard, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram, or even sometimes when I'm on the Book of Face, because I still go over to the Book of Face from time to time. I try to also reveal myself. I try to take off a mask. I try to reveal the multiple avatars that are fully integrated in who you're looking at right now, and say, listen, yeah, this is Omi and this is Omi too. And I need you to see all of me. So that way, when you're understanding the work I'm trying to do for more than half of the world's population who's menopausal and getting older, that you don't think that I'm above it, that I've risen above whatever you think I am, because I haven't.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So this distortion concept is a perfect time to throw it to Nayyirah, because I think Flint has been one of those, lightning moments, but also I think it's been really hard for local organizers in Flint, as attention has been, thrust upon the area over, since the water crisis began, but not always helpful to the actual organizing structures that exist in Michigan, and especially in Flint. So Nayyirah, I want to invite you up, please. What are your thoughts around the celebrity-fication? I know you've dealt with lots of celebrities in your orbit in Flint and around Flint and talking about Flint. So yeah, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it's always just something like when, it's like work that you do that gets recognition because of an inciting moment, and like, just like, work for like quite a while, like long before this is like here in Flint. And it could be somewhat distracting. Who are you reporting to? Like, who has anointed you to do this work? Like, who are you reporting back to? Who are you bringing along with you? Like, who is your people? Like as we are doing this work, and like, I'm like in the realm of environmental justice, where it's like it's life or death, because it's like your life or your or your death. Because like liberation is about like liberation, and not necessarily like I'm going to parachute in, like this is going to launch my brand. Like I'm like I don't even know. Like liberation should be a way of life. It shouldn't be a brand, because to me brands come and go. Like they're in style, they out of style. Like how people are wearing, I don't even know, like, because I don't do brand, how many people are wearing stuff from like 10 years ago, or where's your 10-year-old cell phone, that stuff, because it's very ephemeral. And I know, like, you know, like the work that we're doing is not ephemeral. It's not something you could just take down and just throw away or like donate to the Goodwill. It's something that's very integral to our way of being.
Thanks for mentioning the t-shirts. I have a bag in the closet I intend to make into a quilt from the last 2 decades, and I've refused to let them go. I was going through them and I was like, oh, maybe I could donate. And I was like, I couldn't let any of them go. You know, each of them represented, you know, such an important moment for me, or an experience, or a memory, or, you know, a link to that work. And thank you for also bringing up, like, who are your people? Who are you accountable to? I talk about this so much about, like, if you are not accountable to anyone, then you can't be considering yourself an organizer. It's built into the work, that accountability. You have folks that you have to answer to, people that count on you, and people that you can be called to the carpet from, right? That say, hey, you know, tug your shirt. Hey, Leslie, your slip is showing. Hey, we got to talk about this thing because it's not right. And I know myself, those are the best moments I have, the most creative moments I have, the most connective moments I have, are when I'm in that deep community with folks that can hold me accountable, and we're having those deep discussions. You know, we build the world we want to see and how we do the work, right? Not just the outcomes that we may or may not get from the work that we do. So I'm going to stay with you, Nayyirah, and just ask about, what do you think about this increasing expectation for the type of visibility? Has it helped movements? Has it hindered them? I'm sure this might be another both and. I know none of us live in the binary. We try and hold things together, but I'm curious about that too, Nayyirah, to just expand a little bit about what that type of visibility has meant for you personally, for Flint in general. Yeah, what have you seen, and what has that experience been like?
I would say, like, one, that the hindering could be a lot of times the outcomes of the solutions aren't designed by folks who are directly impacted. And that's like a continuing challenge, where you have kind of like this paternalistic decision making of like, oh, this is what we feel your solutions are. And people are supposed to be like, yeah, like just being like grateful for that, which is like just mad weird. But I would say, like, some of the, you know, the help, which, I mean, sometimes like inciting moments, like, you know, like the Flint water crisis, like really sparked kind of like this national discussion of like lead in drinking water. And now, like, there is like federal policy in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to remove lead service lines across the country. So now there's finally like some money, but, you know, so I would say, like, I mean, it has the potential to be helpful, but you have to like do the actual work. It's not just like this just happened, and then it's gonna be these bunch of, like, I'm gonna say it, like, well-meaning white people who are just like, now we're coming in riding the white horse, that the cavalry has arrived, and now everybody can go frolic in the fields after that. Like, that's not how, you know, stuff work. It's been like multiple street battles. And I'm just thinking about like what the whole celebrity-fication question. One thing I forgot to mention is, like, I mean, it can also be extremely dangerous too, because like people can be targeted and have their life at risk because they have been, you know, like perceived or real of just like they are the leader. So this idea of like, if we could just take them down, like the movement and the work goes away. And that's why you got to have people around you so the work continues, even if you are, you know, like incarcerated or assassinated.
Thank you for that, Nayyirah. So true. Omi, I want to throw it to you next to talk about this visibility question. You know, is it helping us? Is it hindering us? How has it affected your work? I know, you know, so much of your work is about bringing visibility directly to this issue of Black women and femmes and gender expansive folks and menopause. I know it's helped me personally directly. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts about this question about visibility and how it affects our movements and what that does to the work that we try to do?
You know, something that Nayyirah, I appreciate this question around my work, but something that Nayyirah said that really sat with me and resonates with me is also the safety issue. You know, folk who are in movement space, we kind of have overlapping relationships because we've all done a lot of different types of things. And if you've been in movement space for over 20 or 25 years, you've been in relationship with people in different ways. And I've seen so many people that I hold really dear be so unsafe in the last like 5 to 7 years, where their personal information has been doxxed. They've had to move several times, people moving around in their workplace, their community, and when they travel with security, people receiving death threats. And so the shadow side of visibility for us as Black folk is a question of life or death often, or, you know, people trying to figure out a way to take you out of the space. And I think for this current iteration of work that I'm doing, that's not only the thing I'm doing, but the thing that brings me so much joy and I love so much. The visibility is important because there are so many taboos and assumptions that we make around who's a menopausal person and when it's going to happen to them. And the visibility has allowed us to expand the conversation to include all people, all genders, different ages, different circumstances and realities and truths. But then what happens with me sometimes is I become tokenized with white cis hetero women who are doing work around menopause and aging and midlife, and they want me to be the Black ombudsman. And I have said that to them. I was like, I just, you know, when people reach out and say, hey, Omi, you'll be on a panel. I found your social media. Would you be on a panel? I found your social media. Would you be a speaker? And I always say, listen, I am not the righteous representative of all Black people who are experiencing menopause or midlife. I am not the ombudsman for all Black people. I said, so if you want to speak about why I think this platform is critical for marginalized people, then I'm certainly happy to share that. But if you think I'm going to speak on behalf of all of us, you're sorely misunderstood. And so it is important for me to know that the visibility that has like been really bizarre and taken off in the last kind of like 2 years around this platform does put me in connection with people that I haven't had relationships before, does open the space up for people who are struggling, like legit struggling, trying to figure out like why they don't know what's happening to their bodies, what's happening to them emotionally or spiritually, like us being able to connect with them and provide a space for stories to be shared. That's dope too. But I also have to, I feel like I'm constantly trying to toggle between the both andness of that. And I don't also want that to become a litmus test for any of us who have some level of visibility around the type of support you deserve. So I've noticed recently with philanthropic folk that they will ask you, what are your social media handles and how many followers do you have? And I'm like, how is that actually like indicative of the deepness, the depth, the breadth, or potency of the work that folk are doing? It feels like a very unfair litmus test for folk to have, especially because we know a lot of grassroots folk like, I ain't on the social like that. I'm in the streets. So then why are you asking me this question? So yeah. I feel like there has to be some parity, and we've got to apply a critical lens to what visibility does and who's offered visibility to. I'm palatable. I'm a palatable person. I ain't saying I was cute. I said I was palatable. So I
mean, you are cute though, just for the record.
I clean up good. I do clean up good, but I'm palatable. And so I recognize that folk want to look at my social media, but what she got on? Those cute earrings. Look at her hair. And so this is also a way in which how we show up. I love Sarah's work. I follow you. You're so dope. It's like how we show up in our own Blackness and who deems it palatable, who deems it beautiful, valuable, lovable, deserving of visibility, deserving of support. It's stressful as hell. And as you get older, it becomes even more kind of a tricky dynamic, I think, because erasure is real.
Ooh, very true. You're making me think that there's a newer, more updated version of double consciousness, right? That Du Bois talks about, that we are in this moment of what is our public persona and how does it match up or not match up with our real life self. So my last name is not Mac, but my public one is. And so my husband jokes all the time, like, people know Leslie Mac, but they don't know Leslie. And so this is something we're always trying to kind of, juggle. What does that mean to have a public persona, but also the person that is behind that persona is not the same as whatever you see out there, publicly. Jaelynn, I want to go to you because I think it's really important. It has been so important, especially for Black trans women, to have increased visibility, to take up more space in so many of our movements. And that also has a safety component to it for Black trans women specifically. But also it's been important as that erasure has been so wholesale, especially if we look at Black movement spaces, the erasure of Black trans people generally and Black LGBTQ plus folks. So yeah, what does it look like for you? What are you thinking, especially as you do this important work at the Lavender Rights Project?
Yeah, I'm thinking about I'm with Omi on the security issues that do arise, I think, particularly for trans folk in general, right? And Black trans organizing. There is a very specific targeting that the right is using that to push their specific agendas. And they probably do this across the board, but we're seeing it really right now with this anti-trans youth legislation. Also attacks on bodily autonomy and rights such as abortion. That they are using as a strategy, targeting those folks who are celebrity organizers and activists and trying to take them down as proof that we are, terrible, awful people who are trying to change the entire, society to be trans or whatever their agenda points are. And so I think right now at this crucial moment in trans liberation and the attacks that are coming, and increasing day by day and probably going to be with us for the next 4 years, there's a real security issue that we have. And something about the way that we have shifted towards sort of leaning more on the celebrity organizers has disrupted a little bit our security culture that has existed in Black trans organizing since Miss Major and Marsha P, because they were organizing in the margins, right? And even when they were bringing liberation to all LGBTQ folks, they weren't welcome on the main stage. They were laughed off, screamed off, and etc. So we have in our houses, in our ballroom houses, in privacy, we have all, being Black and trans is almost synonymous with organizing, but we have always figured out how to do it in the margins, and with that came a real strong security culture. But now that's slightly disrupted, and we're really vulnerable right now, given that we have changed everything about how we are moving in the world, and the alt-right and the right are coming after us. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky moment, I think, for us and my folks.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Jaelynn. And it makes me think about that. We talk about these like larger than life figures, Miss Major and Marsha P. Johnson, and the work that they did. I'm thinking in my head now, some of the erasure that they experienced. We're trying to pull that back now, make sure people know about the history that Pride started as a riot, that this is the foundations of the LGBTQ plus rights are centered in the experiences of trans folks. So thank you for your work, but also you're right about the security culture and celebrity kind of clashing, that they don't match up very well with each other. Sarah, I want to turn to you because so much of your work is centered on increasing visibility around colorism, what it is, how it shows up, and also changing who's visible and who's not. I speak as a recipient of, the privileges that colorism bestows upon me as a light-skinned Black woman. And I know that, as Omi says, I'm extremely palatable, super palatable. So people are glad to have me on their stages and in their spaces. And so I'm curious about visibility is such a big component of colorism healing. So just want to have your thoughts around that, about what that means for you.
Yeah. So again, I'm just honored to be a part of this conversation because as I listen, I'm being fed and filled and inspired. But I think Omi was the one who said it's about who's controlling the narrative. And that's the key with visibility, because in a lot of ways, for example, dark-skinned people have been hyper visible, but not on our own terms. And I think that's the defining feature. And I think we have to talk about the role of social media and the changes and the shifts and how many people in the world now have agency that didn't exist before to be in control of the narratives of themselves, right? And I think even thinking about our ancestors, thinking about our the people who came before us in our legacies and our lineages, they didn't have the kind of access, they didn't have the kind of access or agency in terms of the tools and the mechanisms of a cell phone, right? Or, you know, a laptop, or even knowing someone with a cell phone who can take a photo of you and they can take 10 photos and you decide, well, this is the one I want to put forward. This is the one I want to share with the press. This is the one I want to put as my profile picture. And so little things like that, I think we are in a generation, we're in an era now where we have more tools than ever before in the history of humanity to be in control of what the narrative of our visibility is. But I do think that what happens when people become visible is a lot about the narrative that's being shared with that visibility. So it's not visibility just for the sake of it, but it has to be intentional. I'm all about being intentional and having a clear purpose for everything that we put out, everything that we share. And speaking similar to what a lot of people are saying is, even me as a darker skinned woman is palatable. I think about my body type. I think about my gender identity, right, and my sexuality. And so even within the space of being a dark-skinned Black woman, knowing that there are other dark-skinned people of various types who still within the conversation of colorism are not getting the visibility that they need. And so being aware of that, right, like I also want to be seen, and I want people to see me being unafraid to be seen, but also knowing that I'm still trying to create space for the diverse dark-skinned people that exist on the planet.
Yeah, I love that self-awareness of being in community with folks, and that we unfortunately live in a society that puts a hierarchy, right, on so many things, including visibility as well. I want to stay with you, Sarah, and ask you this direct question. You know, how do you define success in your work? You know, there's this question as organizers, you know, what are the pathways to success as organizers, as activists, and what does it mean to be successful? I think it's something I struggle with myself as I build my own brand and I build my own consulting work. You know, how do I measure success in a world that seeks to stop all of the work that I'm doing from happening? So yeah, I want to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, so I'll share a quick anecdote. When I first graduated with my master's and I went back to my hometown, I was teaching at a predominantly Black high school in my hometown. And my orientation at that time was, I want to help all the children. And I want to help them transform every single student. I want their lives to be completely transformed. I want the path, the vision that they see for themselves to be completely different. And the people around me were all saying, well, if you just change one, or if you just influence one, if you just support or help one, then you've done a great job. And back then I was like, nah, one is not good enough. Like, I want everybody to like be better for having known me. But now, over a decade later, I'm like, I understand the power of one. I no longer begrudge the small, quote unquote, small successes. And for me, my measuring stick is the feedback I get from my community, from my audience, from the people who I'm trying to impact. Are they responding and saying, this actually helped me? You actually taught me something. You actually helped me to heal. You actually helped me to find my own power. You actually helped me to create change in whatever domain I work in. And so I rely heavily on that feedback. And I think if I ever get to a place where I'm not getting that kind of feedback, where no one's saying, oh, this is actually helping me, then I need to reevaluate. And I think that has helped me find my true north. And so I would say my core set of values, if regardless of the noise, because you get so much negative feedback too, like that's a real thing. You get a lot of criticism or people saying, well, you should do this. And so I always have to come back to what my core values are. And as long as what I'm doing aligns with that, then I feel confident moving forward.
I love that. Jaelynn, I want to go to you next. You've been successful in a lot of different spaces. So how do you just define success in your work, and what does it look like, you know, in a world that values you know, bigger is better, more, you've got to expand, you've got to add all of these things, which, you know, we all know are components of white supremacy culture. So yeah, Jaelynn, how do you navigate that, you know, and combat that need to prove to people that you know, your work is successful and valuable?
I think this question, I think, is like a constant sort of spiritual contemplation for me. And forgive me if I go off into the religious and
no,
bring
please.
me back.
I love
get too far.
Listen, I always want a Reverend Scott sermon on anything I do. So please, we are ready to receive it.
I've been thinking about, I guess, eschatology, end times, and, you know, sort of hope against heaven and paradise and utopia. And, you know, it's just I think I'm figuring out that my own personal spiritual path is a constant contemplation about what does it mean to have a sense of like hope in hopelessness, right? And a understanding. My own spiritual tradition talks about these deities or these beings that are bodhisattvas, and they really, I think, in the end, the statement is that they don't actually believe that there is a such thing as enlightenment, but they never stop fighting to have everyone enlightened, right? And, you know, for me, it's like will there ever be trans liberation, right? Will there ever be queer liberation? Will there ever be Black liberation? You know, and, you know, no, not in our current, you know, framework in societies. No, the nonprofit industrial complex isn't going to get us there. No, we haven't figured out the organizing tools to get us there. I just don't see it. But yet there's something very just human about fighting for it, right? And how do I deal with this paradox of like, I don't see it. I don't see it. And I'm giving up on even trying to see it like in this lifetime, but also being really willing to deeply root myself in fighting for it in spite of having no hope for it, right? And so it's just that constant paradox. So I think for me, you know, that personally what success, and I think I'm seeing this in our community, is just giving the ability for people to root themselves in their humanity and realize that the core part of their humanity is to revolt, is to fight for their own liberation and the liberation of their community, and to give voice to that. And so the more people I have fighting, the more people alongside me, the more room and space I can give to that. I think that's full success. And I ain't even worried about what's coming after that.
So you did just give a sermon, just for the record. And thank you for that. Nayyirah, I want to turn to you because as an environmental justice organizer, I think this question is particularly thorny, right? You, as you said earlier, we are fighting for the life of this planet and our ability to live on it. And so I think when we talk about concepts of, you know, Black liberation, you know, I know we're working towards a world that I won't see. Hopefully, you know, I hope for future generations, but I have taken that in and understand. But in your work, we really cannot wait. This is a ticking time bomb of you know, dire straits that we're under. And so I'm curious how you navigate this and what success is you know, looking like for you.
Yeah, in many ways, I feel like, you know, like some stuff was just like, we just way too late. And it's just like, how are we going to collectively die gracefully, if death can be graceful like that? But me thinking about just kind of like, you know, like how I just like day to day define success. Like I just think about every action of the day with my reflection at the end of the night. It was like, how am I building the power? Like, how am I building power, like in my community, and not like this power in like this classist way of just like having these intellectual conversations of what like the liberation is going to look like through like some specific policy tool. Like I want to know like the people in public housing, like how are we building power with the folks who just living their lives? You know, how are we making sure that like, because one of the things that really shaped me is like really having kind of like these reading groups locally that I participated in many years and building like this political analysis, so we know like who the enemy is, and like how are we, you know, dismantling like these U.S. imperialist policies that is perpetuating, and we're tearing down and interrogating capitalism. And because like our communities have become sacrifice zones for capitalism and for these profit margins and benefiting like Wall Street and not like our communities. So like a lot of like the political education of like, this gas is high, but it's not high because of this. It's really because of greed, or the reason why, like we got poisoned is because like they wanted to build like this other pipeline and like help build like this other energy monopoly, like wanted to build a plant nearby, and they was trying to like court them and get them on board, and then in those financial things. So just thinking about like how are we building the power, because like this is not going to happen in our lifetime. Maybe not like the next generation, and it may be too late, but it's like, we gotta like, it's time for us to rise up. It's time for like the active resistance portion. And like, you can't be polite when somebody's stepping on your neck. Like you can't negotiate that. You got to overthrow that, so it's time for us to do some overthrowing and for us to stand up and fight back against these systems that is not here for us. Like they here for us to die. Like we're already written into like their profit plan. So it's like, no, I deserve to be alive. We all deserve to be alive, and we not accepting no more policies that's gonna like that's going to be like approving like Black death and brown death and indigenous death and none of our communities. Like we're not here for this. And so they're gonna have to come up with something else or they're gonna be out.
Oh, thank you, Nayyirah. Omi, I want to close out this question with you. What does success, how do you define success in your work? And what is that pressure to sculpt yourself into a specific bucket to be considered successful?
I'm thinking about my generational footprint first. I'm 55, and I think so much of my Gen X kind of shaping is that you always had to provide evidence that you were doing good work, or you were a good person, or that you had, not like messed up with all of the investment that people had made in you, right? Or had put into you, whether that was for education or for movement work, your politicization, or whatever the case may be, that you had to then bear the fruit of this evidence, which is also married very, very deeply with white supremacist notions around work and how work happens. And this constant churning, constant grinding, constant churning. And what I have found myself engaged in probably the last 7 years of my life is really reminding myself to get grounded again and sit in the spiritual ancestral imperative that I'm moving with, right? So any of the work I do, Black Girls Guide work, reproductive justice work, healing justice work, if I'm not grounded in the fact that what this work I'm doing is actually a spiritual and ancestral imperative, I'm not going to be successful. I don't care how many widgets I produce. I don't care how many campaigns that I do. I don't care how many policies I get passed. If I rise up out of the fact that what the work that I'm doing, this libertary work that I'm doing, is an ancestral spiritual imperative, and that my ancestors also want me to be a part of that liberation. They want me to be healthy. They want me to be happy. They want me to be accountable. They want me to be in right relationship, right authentic relationship with myself, my children, my family, my community, right? If I'm not doing these things, if I don't feel like I can figure out how to keep returning to that driver, that truth, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what kind of t-shirts I sell. It don't matter how many TikTok dances I do. It doesn't matter if people find me on Instagram, whatever the case may be. If you listen to the podcast or not, it doesn't matter. Because that means that what I have done is I've divorced myself from the integral way that I'm supposed to be showing up, the integral way I want to show up. Mm-hmm. And I know that generationally, there are some folk who were my teachers who modeled really toxic, unhealthy ways of doing movement work. And they taught me so much. Like, I'm grateful for them. And I also am so sad that some of what I learned and what I saw has been replicated. I replicated it, and I've been giving myself permission to stop doing some of the things that I saw unhinge and make people unwell and actually literally take people out of this world. And so, Nayyirah, I am here for a prolonged Black life. I want our lives to be long, like full of prosperity and healthy. And so we know that whatever movement work we're doing, whatever liberatory practice we're in, is in concert to that. But we also have to take care of ourselves. And like, so much of what I have been unlearning in the last several years has been like, well, Omi, how are you centering yourself in your care? Like, what is your spiritual hygiene? Like, how are you making sure that you're engaging in respite and celebration? Like, what's your gratitude practice, right? And so I think that, you know, we get driven by a lot of external things. And for me, the pathway to success is being really grounded in understanding and returning to your imperative in the first place, and taking care of yourself in the process.
I love that, especially in the context of like this clarity, you know, moment of understanding what your personal imperative is and connecting that to your ancestral one. Since you went there, we're going to stick with you, Omi, and you know, start with this last question: is what do you see as the legacy of your work? You know, what does that long tail look like, and how are you building towards it?
Yeah. So I wrote something down because I try to remember things, and then I'm like, where did I put my keys? So I thought I would just write down what I was thinking to this question. And I said, I really want to be on the vanguard of a particular movement space and praxis that is about cartography, right? Map making. So map making to returning to ourselves, map making to healing ourselves, map making to loving ourselves, map making that's really grounded in our love of our culture, our love of ritual, making tools accessible and inclusive, and resonant. The wisdom that we can provide for ourselves in the here and the now and for future folk is dependent on that. And so I do see the legacy that I'm wanting to leave is like cutting a wide swath and inviting folk to walk with me right now. Like, I'm not trying to like do some kind of like Dead Sea Scrolls and you got to go find it. Like, no, you're creating it with me right now. Like, we are cartographers together. We are conspirators in this cartography that we're doing. And map makers have to walk the path first, right? We have to test out the food. We can say, you can eat this right here. It's healing. You eat that, it'll kill you. We will lose some people along the way. We might even lose ourselves along the way. And then we have to return to the path and come back. You give yourself permission to be like, I'm gonna sit a spell. Because I'm Southern, we say something, yeah, I'm gonna sit a spell. Let me just rest. I need to rest. And then you can return to the path. And so modeling that, I think, creates a wider way for folk to do that with you and the future generations to find you, to find that. Yeah, so.
Oh, I love that so much. Nayyirah, I want to throw it to you. Yeah, what do you see as the legacy of your work? I have been so moved by your revolutionary framing of environmental justice. And so I'm curious as to what you see as that long tail for you and what your legacy will be.
I mean, I don't really know. You know, like from the beginning, you know, fighting for clean water and clean air and, you know, a safe place to live. And like so many other people who become activated in frontline EJ communities, frontline fence line communities, you know, like I have been, you know, like damaged health wise, you know, by that. And just, you know, by those exposures. And now I have chronic illnesses. So I'm always like, you know, what happens if I die tomorrow? I mean, I guess like having folks coming up behind me, you know, and knowing that the work is going to continue, even though I may not be physically on this plane of existence, then I'll just be like the ancestor, protecting the next generations in this work.
Oh, thank you for that, Nayyirah. Sarah, I want to turn to you. I think your work is so much about legacy and how we contemplate our space in the world as Black people. So please share with us your thoughts around this question of legacy.
Yeah, this is a hard one. And part of me feels like legacy is ultimately defined by the people who receive it. And so we can only hope or aspire to create or shape the legacy. But I think it'll be future generations who ultimately understand it and see it in its totality. And I think while we're in the midst of legacy making, it's hard sometimes to really get the full scope of what our legacy might be. But I can say what I aspire to in terms of legacy, in terms of what I can leave behind for people, again, after I'm transition into a different form. And that would be, I think about, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Southern University is an HBCU, historically Black college in Baton Rouge. And recently there was a 19-year-old cheerleader who took her life, and she left, and I'm sorry, trigger warning, right? This is a heavy topic. And part of her public suicide note that she left on Instagram said explicitly, "I'm not enough, and I've never been enough." And I think that's what I seek to speak to in terms of everyone who hears my voice, everyone who reads a caption that I write, everyone who reads a blog post or listens to a video or a podcast that I create. I want everyone on this planet, much less dark-skinned people, much less dark-skinned Black women, right, to feel like we are enough. And again, Ami's example of coming home to ourselves, I've come to see healing as being a process of coming home to myself and realizing that as long as I am with me and within myself, within my being and my essence, I am at home no matter where I am in the world. And I want that to be ultimately the impact that I have in the world, is that people, I just asked the question, how powerful would we be if we got this self-love thing under our belt, right? Because I think the lack of self-love that so many of us have dealt with for reasons, beyond our control, but it has diminished our power. It has diminished our capacity to really fulfill our greatest potential and to really tap into our maximum power as humans, because we're sort of self-sabotaging because of this lack of love. And so for me, I want just the sense of I am enough as I am without donning any additional performance or donning any prescribed aesthetics or any prescribed even dialect, right? And just how I choose to be in the moment is enough on my terms. And I don't have to pretzel myself into being what society says I should be.
Ooh, now that's such a beautiful aspirational legacy to just share, that we all are enough, that each of us are enough just as we are. Thank you for that. I want to close out the conversation with Jaelynn and this question of legacy, which I think is really important. So yeah, Jaelynn, have the floor.
All y'all up in here preaching, that's what I'm gonna say. But I and I hate to close this out this way, but it's truth, right? So many of us Black trans women and femmes don't make it to my age. And I think I also am Southern and from Mississippi, and I waited years to transition, just had internalized the fear of, I think in retrospect, I know it's the fear of death and danger and lack of abundance and prosperity that I thought would be my legacy growing up, right? If I transitioned early. And so I transitioned late, which also, comes with the blessing of I was immediately the elder in the Black trans community, because we don't last to 45, right? And so, though it's windy, right? And I got here and I'm 45 and I'm an elder, I want to leave a legacy of Black trans elderhood. I want to live a little bit longer so that I can say this is what's possible for Black trans women and femmes, that you can have abundance, love, relationship, and long life, and become an elder in the community. Unfortunately, this is the only way often that we can get there is if you transition older, because we just don't make it if you do it in your 20s. So I want that to be the legacy, and I want to fight real hard so that folks who are 16, 20, 25, living in Mississippi and Jackson, where I grew up, in Florida, Alabama, DC, Houston, right now, that those Black trans women live 25, 35, 45 years as Black trans women and live in abundance and fullness and love and community support, right? That's what I want to see, and that's the legacy I would love to leave.
Thank you for that, Jaelynn. So beautiful as always. Well, that brings us to the end of this amazing discussion. I hate for this to end because it's so rich and beautiful, and all of you are so brilliant. Thanks everyone for joining us. I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you all. Jaelynn, we'll start with you. Please let the folks know where they can follow you, support your work, and where they can connect with you as well.
Yeah, the best way to find me is just at Lavender Rights Project, Lavender Rights Project, very long, on Instagram and Facebook. You can also find me at Jaelynn Scott at Instagram.
Thank you so much, Jaelynn. Nayyirah, where can folks follow you, support your work, make sure they know where they can see all of the amazing things you're doing?
So you can follow me on Twitter at Nayyirah Shariff and Instagram at vmilitant, where you can see like some of the travels, vegan food that I cook and plate myself, and tea that I drink.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sarah, please let folks know where they can support Colorism Healing and support your work as well. You're doing some really great stuff. I think you're transitioning, right, to YouTube. Am I wrong about that? Or I thought I saw something about that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the safest place to, if you always want to know where you can find me, is colorismhealing.com. So my website. I'll still be on Instagram at Colorism Healing, but I am transitioning to prioritize YouTube, which is also Colorism Healing.
Thank you so much. Omi, where can folks find you? What projects you have coming up? Anything you want to share with folks?
Sure. I mean, I think the easiest way to learn more about the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause is to check out our website, www.blackgirlsguidetosurvivingmenopause.com. You can follow me on Instagram if you want to. You can check us out. I'm both I've changed my IG handle to Omisade Burney-Scott from Oshun Sweet and Sour, and Black Girl's Guide to Menopause. We actually just launched a really delicious menopause and midlife discussion deck. So for those folk who are into tarot or oracle cards or angel cards, we just co-designed this deck. There's like 100 cards that ask questions about menopause and midlife. And then we use the 5 elements or the 4 elements, the 5th element being you. Ooh, look at that. And just, check us out. And I'm really excited. We can learn more about each other in this way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank all of you for being a part of this conversation. Thank you for agreeing to be part of the Frontline 40. I'm so excited for this collection of amazing organizers. Folks can check out everything around the Frontline 40 on all of the Frontline social media. And you can see the full list. You can interact with more folks. And we do have some more discussions that we have coming up. These are going to be over on Twitter tomorrow, June 16th at 7 p.m. We're going to have a juicy discussion about the cost of being a truth teller. We're going to be joined by Frontline 40 recipients Drew Dixon, Hillary Holly, and Lindsay Love for that conversation. It's going to be really rich and talk about the cost of telling your truth and what that means in the world. Next week, Monday, the 20th at 7 p.m., we're going to have a collection of artists from our list talking about Black art in the digital age and what this new paradigm of artistry looks like in the world. And then on Wednesday, we close out with our last discussion on June 22nd at 7 p.m. We'll talk with a group of folks that are on the front lines of reproductive justice. Obviously, this is on the forefront of all of our minds right now as we await the SCOTUS announcement. And so we're going to be joined by some amazing leaders in reproductive justice for that. So thank you for joining us. Again, you can follow the Frontline on Twitter at We Join Frontline for all of the information around the Frontline 40. And thank you so much again to Omi and Jaelynn and Sarah and Nayyirah for joining us for this open conversation about the program. So we will talk to all of you very soon. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.